will focus on the human resources we allocate to a project, introducing two of the most useful tools to manage people in a project: the OBS, the Organizational Breakdown Structure, and the RAM, the Responsibility Assignment Matrix. Let's start with the OBS, which is the human version of the WBS, focusing, in other words, on the organizational structure of the project. The OBS is a description of the organization of our project in a hierarchical way. We have a project team, where we have a project manager, as well as different people in charge for the single areas of the project, coming from the various departments or functions of the company, and a number of people working for each department. In other words, each department represents one of the breakdowns, with someone on the top and then all the resources. In many cases, the people in charge for each department are called project leaders. The OBS is one of the simplest project management tools, since it looks like the organizational chart, taken at the project level. Still, it is very useful to map all the people involved in a project. All the people will be in charge of one or more activities. Usually, it has as a starting point the project manager, possibly reporting to a steering committee, if in a strong matrix or a task force. Then the various project leaders for the various departments, and then all the team members for each department. It is essential to highlight a huge difference between the OBS and the organizational chart. In this case, we consider all the people that will work on the project, no matter if they are actually employees of the organization or external resources like consultants or even suppliers. Knowing who is working on the project is a great starting point, but it is still not enough to plan a project properly. We need some step further. The next logical step is to start reasoning on who is going to do what, in other words, crossing the WBS and the OBS. This tool is the RAM, the Responsibility Assignment Matrix. The idea is pretty simple. A matrix with the rows coming from the WBS, representing the various activities that need to be done, and the columns coming from the OBS, with the different people involved in the project. At the intersection of activities and people, we can define the role of those people on those activities, thanks to the RASCIVS standard, which defines 7 standard roles in a project. According to the standard, these letters can be R for responsible, A for accountable, S for supportive, C for consulted, I for informed, V for verifier, and S for signatory. The responsible is the person that actually works on the activity. Obviously, teamwork is allowed in any project, so we may have more than one R on the same activity. The accountable is the person that approved the complete activity. In other words, is the one taking the full responsibility on the results of the activity itself. It may or may not be the responsible, the R, that actually did the work. Be careful, it is essential that we have one and only one accountable per activity. A note on this very relevant rule: it is possible that the responsible and the accountable are the same person. The supportive, S, is the person that may help the responsible during the execution of the activities. Picking someone as a supportive instead of as a second responsible is a clear message on how we expect the work to be managed in the team. The consulted, C, is the first of the two roles, along with the informed, I, that help us in the planning phase to manage the knowledge flow during the execution of the project. The consulted is the one that has all the information or competencies to execute the work and need to be involved by the responsible of the activity in a bidirectional communication to take the proper decisions on the execution of the work. The informed, on the other hand, is the person that needs to be informed on the state of execution of the activity and of the results reached. But in this case, there is, let's say mainly, a monodirectional communication. The original RASCI standard has been expanded by 2 more roles, which play a relevant role, especially in some technical fields. The verifier is the person, V, in charge of checking that the work complies with the criteria of acceptability and any standards. An example may be the one in charge to check the GDPR compliance of a digital survey in a research project. Finally, the signatory SI is the person that has the signature power, which may be the architect that signs in a project developed by other people within the architecture studio. One of the most interesting aspects of the RAM is that it allows three different types of analysis. First, it can be read by rows, checking that we have one and only one accountable per activity and that we have at least one R per row. Otherwise, no one would work on the activity. In the example, we may easily see how the second row is missing an R somewhere. Second, it can be read by columns, checking for the relative involvement of people in the project, which may have an impact on some organizational decisions, such as the chance to involve someone full-time or part-time on the project. It is interesting to read the project manager column that should be highly coherent with the kind of organizational structure picked for the project. For example, it would be very difficult for a PM to be accountable for many activities in a weak matrix, while it would be weird if he or she is not accountable for many activities in a strong structure, like a strong matrix or a task force. The two images are showing very different examples of project managers, highly or poorly involved in the accountability of the project, and we need to check that this is coherent with the organizational structure of the project. The third and final analysis is by cluster, for example checking if we have the right amount of teamwork involving different functions and activities that require different perspectives and knowledge integration. The image is showing how in the third row we see some team working, for example. As you can imagine, we cannot have such a precise tool for very big and large projects. When we've got a project with thousands or hundreds of thousands of activities, it's impossible that the project manager has got these details about the responsibilities. Still, if we have a good project structure, we would have some kind of second-level project managers, often defined as control account, which keeps under control a smaller part of the project, and they will probably have their RAM to manage their people and their activities.